What's up, everybody? It is I, James, coming to you from the Nerdy Musings podcast studio. Today, I am joined by the illustrious, the glorious, the sometimes ever sleepy, most interesting man in the world, Ron Garney.
That's me.
Yes, sir. How you doing today, my friend?
I am. Well, now that I am here with my friend James, life has taken on a whole new meaning.
That's
Filled with
hopefully in a good way.
filled with pumpkin pies and little
Oh,
gingerbread.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome.
How are
And,
you doing?
you know, for those not watching the video version of this, you had to start with a drink to get yourself prepared for me.
Good. So I'll do it again, just for all you viewers and listeners.
Man,
Ah,
Knob Creek.
it's got a great maple taste to it, smoked maple.
Man,
Smoked
day
maple whiskey.
drinking.
Yeah.
You really
Day
are the most
drinker. Yeah.
interesting. You really are the most interesting man in the world. That was Dos Equis, though.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
go- you're going to the hard stuff. Oh, now he's balancing it with water. That's
I
good.
have to. Yeah, I always drink water after I drink my whiskey.
Well, there you go.
'Cause bad things can happen, especially when I'm on a freaking cast with you of all people.
I'm telling you. And we were talking about you riding your bike, so you got to balance it out, get that blood alcohol level balanced out before you go out riding in the country.
I'm only sipping it. I'm not taking big gulps or anything.
Oh no, not after I edit this. You're gonna be like chugging it.
Yeah,
It's
kill
just
me
gonna be
now.
looped. It's gonna be looped with you just chug. You're gonna
my,
look like you've taken like 50 drinks of it by the time we're done.
my kids will come home. I'll just be draped over my computer. Dad,
so,
they've only seen
so
me
I
drunk
think,
once.
yeah,
I don't normally drink. I mean,
yeah,
I'll sip things
only
here,
with me,
but
only with me.
yeah, only with you. Well, that's a necessity. But I don't normally drink. I'll sip things here and there, but I'm not a big drinker. But one time we
Yeah.
went to a party last year, and it was the first time I drank too much in front of them,
Uh-oh.
and they had to peel me off the floor, basically.
Dang.
Well, they didn't really, but I was definitely feeling really good. I was stumbling my way into the car, and my wife drove home with the kids in the car, and I was saying all kinds of crazy stuff. I guess I don't remember it, but.
The different side of Ron Garney.
What about you and your wife? Are you guys boozers? How's she
No,
doing?
not really. She's doing good. Yeah,
Good.
she's currently out at the barn with our horse Shade, getting
Riding
in
her
some riding and everything. So yeah, she's in her happy place right now.
nice life.
I think it'd be interesting for everybody listening, kind of how we met. Like we were, I think we had communicated maybe a little bit online, but I remember walking into
Talking
the
about
black
me
belts.
and you, or you and your
Yeah,
wife?
you, you and me, buddy. That's all that matters right now.
Yeah, I don't.
But I remember walking into the Black Belts
Yeah,
for Butterflies charity jiu-jitsu seminar, their autism charity, and I had known that you did jiu-jitsu, but I looked across the mat and I'm like, holy crap, that's Ron Garney, and I came up to you and I go, man, I know who you are. I'm a really big fan of yours, and you go, oh. I'm a big fan of yours too. I follow your Instagram. I look at your technique videos. And the
how weird
bromance
is that?
started.
I thought
Yeah.
you had mentioned to me that you had come up to me at a con somewhere before that, but I don't
No,
recall
no,
that.
I never saw you at a con. It was just strictly, I think I was aware that you had trained, that you did jujitsu, and then, so but I didn't realize you were going to be at the seminar or anything like that. So that was really
And
cool.
everybody else got jealous of our instant bromance.
They did. They did. Rightfully so.
They're
Rightfully
like,
so.
"Who is this guy?"
No, but it's been great, and I got to see you most recently down there at the Rose City Comic Con
Yeah, that was
In Oregon.
that was quite an eye opening place.
It's
I must
interesting.
say,
Yeah.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
the slogan is keep Portland weird.
I heard that you just lost was it the governor or the mayor or somebody lost their reelection bid? Was it the mayor
I don't know, man.
in Portland?
I I don't even look.
Oh,
I try to
yeah. You try to avoid.
not concern myself with such things.
I don't blame you.
Yeah.
You live a
So
much
we were
happier life.
talking. I am much happier now. Yes. Yes. When I don't look at any of that, I'm much happier.
Yeah,
So
it's one thing to not look at it. It's another thing when it hits you in the face on its own.
yeah,
That's where I'm like,
and I
I get,
maintain an awareness,
yeah,
but I don't dig too deep.
yeah,
But when we were down there, I think you had just finished up your part of your run on Berserker, correct? And then you were getting ready to start up on another section of it or
yeah.
something. I'm trying to
What was
remember.
that? Last October or something, or
Yeah,
September? Yeah, yeah. I had finished
yeah,
up. Well, I had finished up the first Berserker run way back in January.
right.
And then I was just doing cons and commissions and things like that, things on the side. And I was waiting on a script that I didn't get till much later. I was supposed to get it in the fall, and I didn't get it till this last February, I think, and I didn't even get my contract settled with Boom until February. So I'm working on it now. It's a 48 page one shot with Keanu and Matt, and I'll be finished with that probably in another month and a half. And
Nice.
I'm coming out to San
Yeah.
Diego.
Oh, you're doing the big one.
Well, Boom asked me to go just recently, so we could do
Okay.
promo stuff for Berserker. Like we did
Nice.
last time a couple of years ago. We're going to be doing Hall H again. Hey, sweetie, come here. I want you to say hi to my daughter. This is Big Jim, and this is my son over here. Come here, you guys.
You're
Lean down.
nice.
Can you see him? Yeah, lean down.
Yeah, yeah, I see him. Hey guys. I think
Tristan.
I met your son when I was out there the last time.
Oh, he was probably much smaller.
Much younger. Much younger.
Yeah.
Yep. Good to see you guys.
All right.
Can I have a little money?
Oh my god. This
You
is a
see?
podcast
Yeah,
first. Open
exactly
up
what
that
it's
wallet,
like.
buddy. Open up that wallet.
Exactly what it's like. Unbelievable. Well,
Get that bankroll out,
if I
buddy.
have anything in my wallet, do I go check my wallet first?
If they left anything.
And if I don't, when do you need it by?
3:30.
Three. All right, I'll have it to you before then.
Okay.
Pain in the
Wire
neck.
transfer. Get that wire transfer in quick.
She's gonna have to pay for it somehow. I'll make her wash the fence again outside. I
Well,
always make her earn it.
that's good. Not just can I have money.
I make my son roll with me sometimes. My son's a wrestler now. He's really good.
I think he was just starting to pursue that. Last time we talked, he was getting into that.
Yeah, well, I had him boxing for a while, and then last fall or something, I guess the coach or the security guard at his high school, because he's got you can't tell on this thing, but he's got he's kind of jacked, big arms. He's
Right.
muscular, and
Just like his dad. Yeah.
yeah, well, yeah, he's bigger than I was when I was his age,
Yeah.
but he's jacked. And the security guard said, "Oh, you should try out for wrestling." And so he mentioned Tristan's name to the wrestling coach, and the wrestling coach I used to roll with. So he's like, "Oh my god,
Oh,
I know your
okay.
dad," and so Tristan, he asked him to join the team, and he did. And so he's been in it since last fall, and he loves it. Now I have him doing privates with this big wrestler dude who's like
Oh, nice.
Olympian guy.
Yeah.
I wish it was Cale Sanderson, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So he's been doing that, and he seems to really like it. So I'm really pleased about it. And it's the
Good.
whole
Keep him.
team thing too, because he's out of the house, gets him out of the house,
Yeah.
he's with friends, and I can't stress enough the importance of that for kids. for young people and teenagers to not be sitting in a room, on their phones
Yeah.
basically and on video games and things like that. So this was the best thing for them, especially on the heels of COVID, where
Yes.
everybody was cooped up at home and the country, the world was insane for, a couple of
Yeah.
years.
So that's
Uh,
good that he's got that and that he's actually enjoying it and you're
yeah.
encouraging it because I definitely think, and if he ever wants to get back into jiu-jitsu, like wrestling is such a huge asset to have
Well,
in
I still
BJJ.
force him to roll with me here and there.
Okay. Yeah,
But
you
it's
got
different
mats
now
there at your
because
house.
it's different because he's strong. He's got man strength now. I mean, literally.
Right.
I'm like, holy shit. And it was weird how it happened seemingly overnight, because
Yep.
once he hit his teenage years, he came out of the chrysalis. He went from my little dude to, and all of a sudden it was like, holy, he took the super soldier serum or something. It was like a
Yep.
market jump up. And now he lifts weights and he's, so it's good for me, I mean, I don't train as much as I used to because of my arthritis, unfortunately, but I
Yeah.
keep having fantasies of getting back into it regularly, but I don't know what's
Well,
going
you kind of got a built-in training partner there now.
to. Yeah, I guess.
That's good.
It's nice just to have somebody to, that I can even just play around with and try different things that I hadn't tried, with a gi
Yep.
on, you know.
And I think most people listening, as far as people that follow me will know this, but as far as everybody else, like Ron is also a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like myself. He's been training a long time. Doesn't get to probably train as often as he would like these days, but sounds like you got a little bit of extracurricular training going on at the house, should you desire. So that's awesome to hear, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate. I got, there's a friend of mine owns a school right up the street, and if every now and then I go in there on Sunday mornings, and they have a crew in there, but I was training with this guy Oswaldo Jarema for a long time, and but then really, it's what happens is I hit these roadblocks. Like the latest one was I did something to my foot. Like I had,
Uh-oh.
all of a sudden I started limping and limping, and then I went to use a shovel to dig a hole, and then uh, my whole bone cracked in my foot. Like it was like a
Ooh.
crunching sound, and I couldn't even walk on it, and it swelled up, and I thought I had a fractured tarsal bone, and so the doctor thought, and so there was nothing he could really do. He said you have to just ride it out and see what happens, and it's gotten better, but it still hurts, and has
That's the
been.
thing.
It's been like 4 months, and so I tried
Yeah.
training at Oswaldo's. He opened up a new gym. I tried training there, and it was difficult.
Yeah,
So
with like feet and hands, it's always like get these weird things, and it's just like,
yeah,
oh yeah, you got to just rest.
yeah,
Don't do anything.
I
Yeah,
know, and it's
and
frustrating.
when it comes to feet and hands, like don't do anything. Like God, I got to use my hands. I got to be able to walk. I got to use my feet. What do you want me to
Yeah,
do, man?
exactly.
And then obviously with you drawing, like your hands are important, so you got to keep those as healthy as possible.
I'm no spring chicken. That's for sure. How old are you now?
Well, I'll be 47 this year.
And when I saw you, it was 2014 at the thing at that.
Gosh, was it that long ago?
I think so. I think it
I
was
think
like
it
10 years
was.
ago.
Oh my
Well,
God,
I saw you
that's crazy.
twice because I saw you the first time, and then I saw you another time. We all went out to dinner. We took
I think the
pictures sitting
first
on
time,
it. You were
I
sitting on my
think
lap.
yeah, I think that was the first time, and that's why everybody was jealous of our bromance. The whole lap sitting thing,
Yeah,
and and
jealous.
then
Jealous.
the second time actually that I came out was when you had me over to your studio there, and I actually got to
Yeah.
hang out with you, and you showed me some of your art, and I was doing a little drawing on my, I think I brought my old iPad and was showing
Yeah.
you some stuff, and you were giving me some pointers, and it was really just a surreal experience to go from you know somebody who I was a fan of for so long, and then becoming friends with you and actually being in your studio and stuff. That was really, really neat. It was
Yeah,
special. Like, it's weird the connections that jiu-jitsu has, like, all the time. Like, for me, it's just,
yeah,
it's so bizarre. And when it comes to jiu-jitsu, I noticed a lot of like artistic people tend to gravitate towards BJJ. Like a lot, I know a lot of BJJ people that are artists. Like, I'm thinking just off the top of my head, like I know, well, speaking of artists, like Lionel Yu, he's like a purple belt
yeah.
in BJJ.
Yeah,
And
he
then
was a blue
the,
belt a couple of years ago, and then he got back
yeah,
into it. He actually wrote to me about it.
yeah, and
Um,
there's a few other like pro artists
he
who do
trained with
BJJ.
who did he
I think
train
it
with?
was Cobrinha, I think.
Sabrina, that was it. Sabrina.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep.
So, what do you think it is about the brain that kind of makes us gravitate? Like, do you think it's just because it's all art, like jujitsu's art, art is art, and it kind of appeals to those areas of our brain?
I honestly couldn't tell you because I've met so many different types of people who do it. It
Right,
might be just a thing that it's grown a lot. And I do think that in this particular field, like Lionel would attest to this, that it's you're sitting a lot. And so you need something to get you up and moving. And jujitsu kind of compensates for all that sitting time, you know.
right.
It's not like you're just getting up and going for a walk. Jiu-jitsu requires you to actually get the blood moving through you, and it requires
Yeah,
you to be in better shape. It forces you into shape very fast, the same way running sort of does.
yeah,
You could, like, usually if I were to go running, um, I might be really out of shape for the first couple of times, but by the third time, there's a marked jump in my cardio.
yeah.
And with jujitsu, it's the same thing. I'll train once if I haven't trained in a while, and I'm like, after 5 minutes of rolling, but then over the course of the next couple of sessions, I can get through 10 minutes of rolling without too much trouble. So
Yeah,
it doubles my cardio. So I just think it's the same thing, but I don't know if it's a creative thing in the brain or if there's an area in the brain that it appeals to. I don't know why I did. I think honestly, I probably one, I was really into UFC when and at its inception,
yeah.
and I remember being fascinated with jujitsu in that with great, Hoist Gracie and everything
Voice,
else,
yeah.
so it was as far back as that I had a sort of a curious interest in it, and then I knew I didn't want to lift weights, just lift weights forever, and I had done other martial arts my whole life. I mean, I boxed, I did aikido, I did karate. And so the idea of jujitsu seemed really appealing, and so there just happened to be a gym across from FedEx, one time where I went to drop some pages off for Marvel, and this is way back, 20s, probably.
Back in the days of
Yeah,
actually
like,
having to mail pages, right?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah. It was so long ago.
yeah,
It was probably 2004 or five or something. But yeah, so I walked in there and slapped some money down right away, and then I broke my foot the first week I was there
back to
doing
the foot again.
doing Muay Thai. Well, it was actually
Dang.
a
Okay,
horrible.
okay.
It was a horrible sprain, actually. And so,
At least you did it in a cool way.
what I was going to say is, it forced me to do the jujitsu. I just would lay on the ground and roll with my bad foot, with my
Yeah.
on my back and let guys side control, and I would work from there and things like that because I
It's
couldn't
good
do
though,
the
because
Muay
he
Thai.
force you to work on your defense.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
I always encourage people to like try to work around injuries whenever possible. Like, there's injuries that obviously you're not going to be able to do any kind of training and you just need to rest. But a lot of times I know for myself personally, like when I've been injured and I've found training partners I could trust to work around it and allow me to work, I've developed other parts of my game that I otherwise may not have. I remember that's when I first started playing a lot of half guard, was because I tore my groin on the one side. So I would just spar with people and just use my one leg for half guard, and
Well,
that's how that all started.
I have three legs, so if I were to hurt
Oh, tripod.
Just kidding, family friendly podcast.
Ah,
No, so I know what you mean. I actually like most of the time to start from bed. A lot of times I'll just start and tell somebody to take my back because I just want to work out from the back. You know,
yep,
wherever I feel like I might need work, or because to me, honestly, I'll be honest with you, I have more fun gaining positions and getting out of positions than I actually do submitting people. Or
yeah, same here.
I have more fun sweeping, pulling off a good sweep. There's something
Yep,
really satisfying about the technical mechanics of getting somebody up and off their feet and onto their back with just
yep,
the flick of a foot and like one of my favorites is just a standard sickle sweep because it's so effectively, the percentage
yeah,
rate is very high when people stand up, and if you don't hesitate, you can hit that very quickly.
yeah,
And there's just something very satisfying about it. As you get more advanced, it's very, very difficult to pull off, other types of sweeps and things like that. Some standard stuff, but that one in particular um, tends to work on anyone.
yeah.
If
I
you took
like any time I can. I think I'm the same way. Like I really enjoy like sweeps and things like that. Like obviously getting submissions is cool, but
Yeah.
I like when you can do a sweep like slow motion, like the person knows it's
Yeah,
happening and
yeah,
it still
yeah,
happens. It's
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
me that's like ultimate control and
I
technique, like
know.
trying to get it to that point.
Right. I've
Yeah, I
been in
feel
that
you.
position myself where I'm like, ah, fuck, because I
Yeah,
can sit, the leg. Like I actually was just watching a match with Formiga and somebody else, and
Formiga's amazing.
yeah, he's ridiculous. And actually, well, in this particular instance, guy had I can't remember his opponent, but his leg was way up, and he had Formiga's leg way up in the air, and you could see Formiga was trying to get it off, and he couldn't, and he
Right.
ended up reversing Formiga, but it was
Yeah.
slow. And I know
Yeah.
what you mean by it being slow. It's
Yeah.
like,
And
gosh,
that's no small task to get a sweep on Formiga.
no, no, no. He
He's on.
he got it
Of
back
course he
pretty
did.
quickly,
Of course
and
he did.
then he submitted him.
Yeah.
So
Sounds about right.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. I trained with him for 7 straight years here at my house. Because I was paying for privates a lot because of my schedule. As the comic book artist schedule is very, very,
Very.
very, daunting. And
Yeah.
so
Deadline driven.
yeah,
You got
deadline
to meet the
driven.
deadline. You got to do
And,
whatever it takes to hit that deadline. If that means staying up 3 days or whatever,
yeah.
got to do it.
And so I worked it out where he would come to my house, and so it was nice. I would just go down and train for an hour and then clean up and come back to work rather than having to drive half an hour or wherever I had to
Yeah.
get to the gym. And the other good part about it was, like he would have to go and do whatever he had to do. I had to do what I had to do and come back to work. But when you go to the gym, it's a different thing. One, because you have the whole social atmosphere there, and it's very easy to get in conversations with people and lose track of time. Before you know it, you've spent 3 hours, 4 hours at the gym. You're
Yep.
training. You do the first half hours learning the techniques, and then you roll for an hour, and then you're sitting around. It's a kind of open mat, and then you're talking, and you take your time. Before you know, then you got to drive home. Before you know it, hours have gone by.
Yeah.
Here, it's like he
Always.
comes, knocks on the door. We do talk, and we roll, and maybe an hour and a half tops would go by, but I was getting the time in without losing all the other time on my schedule. And so
Yeah.
that was a big, big help in moving me forward with it and keeping the enjoyment level up, because I had easier access to it.
Yeah,
So,
it's definitely easier when they can come to you and you can get that.
yeah.
Also, having that personal, like, having somebody in a private lesson can actually really help you dial in maybe areas of your game you're having trouble with, or help you if you don't know what areas you're having trouble with. They can, you
Yeah.
know, point them out to you. Like a good black belt can actually, roll with you and be pointing things out as you're rolling or right after the roll. Like, hey, did you feel what I did here? Like, you keep doing this. That's why I keep catching you this way. And it's just,
Yeah. It's weird because it's funny because with Formiga, we just rolled all the
Yeah.
time. There wasn't a whole lot of instruction.
Just
You
beat the
know,
crap out of you.
at first,
Yeah.
I think I was a purple belt when I started with him. And then I caught him once, just on a fluke. I guess I knew
Yeah.
this move, and I caught. After that, it was on. It was like, okay,
Yeah.
and then it was like, okay, now I'm gonna kick your ass, pretty much.
Yeah.
But I kept getting better and better, and then it became a point where the only downside of it was that we knew each other's game so much that we ended up just not being able to do anything. So we
Yep.
were kind of rolling around, and there was so much defense that nothing was happening. And at one point,
Yeah.
he got frustrated and he started smacking me in the head. You know, so I smacked him back. Because we were laughing like, "What the fuck?"
Yeah.
Because if you are working just on with one style, and it wasn't like I wasn't going to the other gym, but I was putting the most time in with him. And the
Yeah.
same thing was with Oswaldo. I was working with Oswaldo a lot, and um, it was great training with him. But you start to rely on that one thing, and then you go like. So I remember I trained with him a lot, and then I wasn't training I was training maybe 2-3 times a week, and then. But when I went to this other gym, I was doing things habitually from rolling with Oswaldo that the other guys picked up on
Yeah.
quickly. Like for instance, even with Formiga, like when somebody was passing my guard or trying to pass, if I felt they were actually pass, I would roll out and expose my back, right? And normally I could get back to my just by rolling and then sitting back and getting
Hmm.
back to my guard. But if you do that with somebody who, but like, but because of the way Formiga and Oswaldo moved, I knew how to time it. But with other guys, they did something different that I wasn't prepared for.
Yep.
I remember I got caught in a bow and arrow choke or something because of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh fuck, and I was like bummed for days. I hadn't been caught in that in years.
Yeah.
Like years. It had been, but it was this other black belt who was very fast, and he just
Yep.
knew what to do if somebody rolled out of that position. So, but
That's the
that's where you
cool
learn.
thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. It
yeah,
keeps us on our toes, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Always something to work on.
yeah.
Well, just to switch gears a little bit, back to a different art form. Um, you know, I always make this assumption that the listeners kind of know as much about the guest as I do, but some of your early start in art, as far as comic art went, you were more of like a kind of a fine artist before that, right? Like you had done painting and things like that prior to comic art.
Yeah, I started out even in high school. I was going to be more of like a Frank Frazetta type painter, and I had all kinds of paintings that I had done, and that's really what I want to do, like paperback covers, like Boris and Frazetta and Michael Whalen, and guys like that. That's really what I love doing. And then I remember I went to college and I had all my paintings from high school and college, and I had them in a bin in the basement of my apartment building, and that got broken into. I came down there; they were all gone. All the paintings I did as a kid, gone.
Oh man,
It was heartbreaking,
definitely.
So I don't know what somebody would have done with them, why they would steal that, but they stole them. And
Yeah.
so that was a bummer. Um, yeah. And so, but then it was like, I was bartending. I was into the nightclub scene. I was out of college. I really didn't know what I was going to do. And then comics sort of found me, by accident. It was just the bartender behind the bar had a comic book. It was a Secret Wars comic book, and I was like, "Oh, I remember these from being a kid." Blah blah blah, and read them in 15 years or something.
So you
And
did read comics when you were a
when I was
kid,
very
though. You had
young,
had comics, yeah.
yeah, but I wasn't an avid. It was just whatever, there was like here and there. I remember I had stacks of creepies and Aries and monsters,
Okay.
famous monsters books, stuff like that. That The
Do you have any? Did you have any Bernie Wrightson stuff or any of that back
Yeah, I
then?
remembered him. Yeah, I remembered him from back then. But as a kid, this is you're talking the early '70s. So
Yeah,
I wasn't focused on the artists as much, and I would respond to things. I remember looking at the art in Vampirella, and it was Gonzalez, and I couldn't believe how beautifully he drew. I remember being able to recognize that art as something that was really attractive,
yeah,
as opposed to other artists. I remember seeing Richard Corbin in Heavy Metal magazine, and I thought that
yep,
his painting technique was really cool. And I remember reading Mobius and Heavy Metal, and but the Gonzalez stuff, there was something beautiful about it. Just the illustrative quality to it. It was, I was really drawn to that, and so that to me was, in my mind, was like I would look at the comic book art, and I felt it was sort of superior to that. Um, just even in my young head, it was just more what I was drawn to. Like I would see stuff in Iron Man, or and it just seemed much cruder and more elementary than the beautiful illustrating, with the washes and the pen and ink and stuff and like
yeah.
vanilla. So yeah, so I really had comics, but I was kind of reading more of the other stuff too. And then, but like I said, I was working at a bar, and the bartender had a comic book. It was a Secret Wars comic, and I'm like, oh, I remember these. And I kind of I went down to the 24-hour store, and I picked up some books, and I kind of got hooked on them. I was like reading them, and I'm like, man, this, I didn't even, it occur to me that I could do this for a living. And I was like, man, I should try this, because I was really into movies, and I thought maybe I'd get into movie making because of the storytelling, and this was a short form of all of that. It's like storyboarding and reading a story, and I got into Walt Simonson's Store. That was the one that really hooked me.
Oh yeah, that was like a game changer for a lot of people.
Yeah, that whole thing, because I was into warriors anyway, and and I loved mythology, and the way he was writing that book. Like I read Greek mythology, and the Iliad and the Odyssey front to back. I was a big fan of it, and even the Bible I read front to back. And so uh, when I read, Simon's Store, it was all there. It was like reading a new form of mythology, because of Beta Ray Bill, and just and the Norse gods and everything. And it was just
Mhm.
the way he integrated the real myths in with the comic book was just the coolest thing ever. And I couldn't wait. I remember I would run down to the store, and I would get the comics, and I would go under a tree down at the park in New Haven, and I would just sit there for hours and just like escape into like, Simon's Store. And I remember when the Beta Ray Bill issues came out, and he was
Yeah,
fighting Beta Ray Bill. I was like literally getting chills, like reading them fight, and they're in front of Odin standing there, and just the way he drew everything. Like
yeah, it's
I remember
amazing.
Thor's calves were like big, and just the kinetic nature of it, very Sergio
Yep.
Pope, sort of influenced, and I was just so into it. And to this day, he's the only guy I gush over, and he knows it. He's a good sport about it, but I can't even talk to the guy because I just look at him like that. And plus, he's never let me down in my vision of what the guy could have been like. Like
Right.
some other artists disappoint their fans when they meet him.
Yeah, sadly.
Walt's not one of them. He's just like somebody you would want to be, him to be. A very sweet, interesting, sincere guy who's very friendly, not
Yeah.
pretentious at all about it. He just loves his art, loves art, loves the comic book medium. And he gave me a Beta Ray Bill original sketch that I have over there. And I just, I'm like,
Oh
oh,
wow.
it's an original. Like, I'm like, oh my.
I'm jealous.
Yeah. And he
I
gave it to
have
me. He
his.
just handed it to me one day at the con. I think
Yeah.
it was in Seattle, actually.
Okay. Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was in Seattle. He walked
Yeah.
over and handed. I think it was then. I think he was there. He just handed it to me, and I'm like, "Oh my god, are you kidding me?" And it's just a sketch, but it's Walt, and it's Beta Ray Bill, and it's
Yeah. I
but
have one of those IDW like artist edition books of all the Thor stuff with the
yeah.
original scans, and I just pour over that thing. It's so crazy, like just how amazing it is even
They're
to this
just
day.
effortlessly loose, and it just
Yeah.
forms
So
these
much energy and
beautiful
yeah.
drawings. And so I was into that, and then I was into Byrne stuff too. That got me into it. I remember reading his FF, and there was a particular comic called Evening of the Witch, and the FF, I guess, are hiding out in Connecticut under assumed
Oh, okay.
identities. And Mr.
Yeah.
Fantastic could change his face so he didn't look like Mr. Fantastic. He looked like some other guy named Mr. Smith or something. And they were all kind of under these assumed identities. And he did something really cool in the comic where he did one story thread of the storyline on the top with the Thing going on at the same time as what was going on in Connecticut with the other three. Well, with Reed and Sue, and I think Franklin was in it. And so it was just the cool. I'm like, man, this is a lot more cooler than I remember them to be. To me,
Yeah.
comics were sort of rudimentary when I was a kid, but this was something else. Reading
Yeah.
Simonson Store, reading the FF, the way Byrne was handling that stuff, and the stories were so good. It was like reading real literature in a way. With Burns, it was more like getting to watch the Twilight Zone or Creep Show or something like that. There's just these cool ideas in there, and like they're hiding out in Connecticut, and then there's a neighbor who's like Gladys Kravitz who keeps snooping in, and she thinks that the Richards are all demons because she's seen Reed like move his face and
Mm,
stuff. She doesn't realize they're the Fantastic Four, so she calls on this witch, Agatha Harkness, and
yep.
Agatha Harkness comes to the house and starts trying to exorcise them. But in doing so, she makes this huge mistake. And Reed's like, "What are you doing? You don't understand the forces you're about to unleash."
Yep.
And she does. And all of a sudden, she's like, "Uh oh, what have I done?" And all of a sudden, you see Mephisto just crash up out through the house, like this giant sized Mephisto. And Reed's like, "Oh no, it's Mephisto." And it was just the coolest, most fun you could have reading a comic book.
Yeah.
You're like, oh my God, this
Yeah.
is so much fun. And in the top, the Thing had a whole thread going on because he was, where with Johnny and Alicia, and Johnny and Alicia, I guess, had formed a relationship on the side behind Ben's back.
Mm,
Or Ben and Alicia were broken up, and Johnny and her kind of got together, and Ben
flame on.
walks in on them. Walks in on them half naked, kissing and
Yeah.
stuff, and the Thing goes nuts, and they start fighting, and so it
Yeah.
was
Those
just
definitely weren't written. I don't think they were written directed towards kids at
yeah,
that point.
no, they were. You can see that the guys who were kids reading them have grown into
Yeah.
young adults or adults. So that was so great. So on that hand, I got to look at these awesome Twilight Zone-ish creep show sort of stories, and then on the other hand, I got to read Greek, Norse mythology all in a comic book that was a new form of it with Walt. So those are the ones that really got me back into the whole comic thing and made me want to do it for a living. Once
Yeah.
I got to do it for a living was a whole different animal, because I had to make deadlines and it became a business. So didn't have the same charm, but I was, it definitely changed my life for the better. It's been great. So I have no complaint.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like a double-edged sword. I know, like me, very similarly, going from being somebody who just, did jujitsu as a hobby, and then
Yeah.
next thing you
Mm.
know, over 20 years later,
Yeah.
teaching
You're a
full time and
big
everything
world
else. It's like
champion and yeah.
it's something where you like I still love every bit of it, but definitely like you said, there are aspects of it that are work and everything. Like when your hobby becomes your occupation, it's a balancing act for sure. Like, do
Yeah.
you find, like, how do you keep yourself, like, being stuck in the deadline and kind of that constant grind? Like, how do you keep yourself motivated? Is a lot of it just kind of, and I know motivation's like an intangible thing. It's kind of like you have to be more regimented or routine oriented, but do you find like you have to get your little escapes from it, like going out and riding
Yeah.
your bike and clearing your head and all of that to kind of keep those creative juices flowing?
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons I had gotten into jujitsu was I thought I could retire doing jujitsu. What I didn't count on is that my body was gonna have the arthritis it ended up having.
Yeah.
I hate bitching about it, because I want to sound like I'm an old man, but I mean, I'm 61, and it started creeping up on me in my mid 40s, little by little, and I have actually a titanium partial replacement in my left shoulder, as you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
but as far as the comic book work itself, after the amount of time I've done it, I've learned how to not overtrain, if I'm going to make that connection.
Yep.
Because if I sit at the table too long, it becomes very toxic. So I know, I've learned to trust my instinct that to get up and walk away from it for a bit, even if it's a day. But the other thing I do is I make sure that I get a little bit done every day, even if it's for a half an hour. Like, let's say it's a Sunday and I have to go to my in-laws with my wife and my kids, or whatever, and I know I have the whole day occupied. I still make a point of sitting down for half an hour to get some stuff done, because you can surprisingly do a lot
Yeah, you
in a
really
short
can. It's
short
that,
amount of time.
and it's that compounding effect, right? Like
Yes,
we,
yes. So
we would all love to have this perfect period, this perfect block of time, but with the way our lives work, it's like it's not
yeah,
always. You don't always have the perfect circumstance to get things
right.
done. So you do have to kind of chip away at it little by little.
And it relieves the anxiety of feeling like I need to get back to the table, because if I psychologically, it's good medicine, because if I don't do something, I feel anxiety. I have to get back to the table. I have to, and early on in my career, it was very difficult. I almost didn't want to do it for a living for that reason, because it was so stressful trying to make deadlines. And I remember I lived with a girl back then in a condo, and it, affected our relationship pretty much, because I would never go anywhere with her. Like, she always wanted to go away on the weekends. And I said, no, I would say, no, I have to work,
Yeah.
and because I was very career, if I was only 29, 30 years old. And I didn't want to F up my career. This was my opportunity. I wanted to make sure that I was reliable. And it was a very hard hill to climb, to be good and reliable, to be someone who could actually draw well and not have it look hacked out by meeting the deadlines, so that took a long time to figure out how to pace myself. But as time went on, I'd done so much work. I'm probably one of the few guys in the entire industry who's done as much work as I've done, for the industry, and at large. Actually, my ex art dealer told me, he said, out of all the artists he represents, and there's been tons, like even Casada, everybody, that he had the most. My art had the most. It was just so much of it, because I did so many projects. I never stopped working. I was always a
When
workhorse.
and you actually did runs on books, like where
Yeah,
you were on for several issues. Like that's kind of a rare thing nowadays. Like
yeah,
I notice I'll really get excited about a certain artist, and it's like three issues occur, and then a fill-in artist comes on for two or three issues, and you're like, wait. Like this
yeah,
wasn't what I signed on. Like I use
yeah.
that subscribe feature on Comixology. Subscribe to a book. I'm like, oh, I love this artist. I'm gonna subscribe to this. And then you get to like
Yeah.
the third issue. You're like, wait, that's not his art.
That's
What's going on?
yeah, for sure. That's definitely what's missing from it now. I remember. Well, I can remember, actually, speaking back to Thor and Simonson. I remember an issue where, or man, I'm trying to remember if it was that, but yeah, it was maybe Sal Buscema did an issue, and I remember being like,
Mm-hmm.
but he was pretty good. Yeah, he was another one that I loved reading when he was on Hulk.
Yeah, Sal's
Yeah,
awesome,
he was great.
but
Buscema was great.
very underrated.
Oh
Very
yeah,
underrated. Like everybody talks about John, obviously, like
yeah,
incredible. You know, like they say, the
absolutely.
Michelangelo of comics is the whole thing. But like, yeah, Sal is very
Oh,
solid
I
too.
love Sal. When I used to pick up. He was another one that I started picking up his when he was on the Hulk. It was just amazing drawing, and but you could clearly see the similarities between him and his brother, and the influence and with each other, So no matter, either one were great to look at. Sal was just more, actually more Walt like in some ways,
Mm-hmm.
where John was more, organic and classical looking. Um, but yeah, so I mean, um, I forgot where I was going with all that.
We were talking about like people being on runs of books
Oh
and how
yes,
that's
yes,
not
yes, yes.
not something that we
Yeah,
really see,
yeah,
nowadays.
right.
It's hard to pick out somebody where you can go, oh, that guy's been on 20 issues
Yeah.
of Captain America or whatever it may be,
Yeah, and
and
it's a shock to the system when you condition yourself to and you like somebody's work visually, the artist, and you open it up and it's a fill-in artist, and it's not nearly as potent or what you've come to read and expect, and then it interrupts your escape, each month, and it was
yeah,
hard to wait for a month in between them. And I remember that too. It was like, oh man, I just want to read the next one. And you wish it was a week later, but it was like 3, 4 weeks later, usually four
yeah.
weeks. And so that was a tough. That's why you had to buy multiple ones so you could read different ones in the middle of all that. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It was tough, and that's a sign of the times actually, because it sort of reflects everything on television, and with streaming and everything else, there's just too many options, and TV shows come and go, or the seasons come and then they're gone for 2 years, and so it's
What do you think it is about how the industry's changed that kind of makes it to where we don't see like somebody stick on a
well,
run? Is it just the nature of always wanting something new, or trying? There's so many different titles now. Like there's 20 different versions of Batman. There's every book seems to have like 30 spin-off titles come off of it, and
I think well, one, I think we've become here, well, I don't know about the rest of the world, but we've become, our attention spans are much shorter. I think
yeah,
part of that is the conditioning from television with commercials. When you're interrupting your train of thought with other things that take you out of whatever escape you're in, it ruins your attention span. And
yeah,
I think,
and not to mention like the phones and
well, that's what I
social
mean.
media, like
Yeah.
all these
It's
distractions,
like
right?
it's exacerbated that to the nth degree, where like my son, he watches these videos and they're like these constant quick cuts of different funny things. They literally
Yeah,
last for 2 seconds, and they're all compiled and they're funny, but the attention on them is literally 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 4 seconds, maybe. And it shows just how much the attention is getting cut. And it's not
yeah,
good. And it started
yeah,
all with commercials. Now, when you watch a TV show, it used to be there would be maybe 10 minutes of commercials throughout an hour program, maybe, if that. Now, it's maybe 10 minutes of the actual show, and there's so many
yeah,
commercials, and YouTube's
yeah,
even gone down that. You used to be able to go to YouTube and be able to skip the ads, but they've even changed that now where they're forcing you to watch the ads for at least 20, 30 seconds.
well, and
And then you can
sometimes
skip.
they'll pop in with like a 3 minute one, and
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
what
and
the
there's
heck?
nothing you can do about it. And so
Yeah,
because of that, I get so annoyed. I refuse to let them force their stuff on me, so I'll just change it. I'm like, okay, goodbye. I just won't watch what I was watching, because I
yeah,
refuse to be, indoctrinated with their the silly commercials I see that are actually, a lot of them are indoctrinating commercials and noisy,
yes,
annoying. But I also think that part of the reason that things have gone from long runs to arcs is it helped the deadlines a lot, because there was a real problem in the industry with artists not meeting deadlines, and they had to meet the deadlines because you had to get shipped and go to printing, and all this stuff. You had to get the lettering done, the inking done, all this. And now it's like you can get things done faster digitally. The lettering gets done, everything's faster. The computer coloring, it's much faster. So there's that, but then there's also the arc saved the books from missing deadlines and missing shipping. A lot of books were missing shipping because artists were just not committed, to actually sitting their asses in the chair and getting it done. I
yeah,
fortunately was one who could do it. I mean, I came from nothing. I came from a very poor background with nothing. And so for me, the opportunity to work for, Marvel was like going to Oz, basically. In my mind, it was like this I remember thinking of Marvel in New York City like it was this mecca, like I would never get there. Like it was like a fantasy. And then I
Yeah.
got in. I was like, so to me, I wasn't going to wreck that. And I was, I made a concerted effort to be very professional because I wasn't going to lose the opportunity and get myself out of, I put myself through college, through loans and everything else. And I got an art scholarship, which didn't amount to a whole lot.
Hmm.
But I came from a very poor, I had no, growing up, I came from a bad background. It was, very dysfunctional and poor. And I had to get out of it, and I wasn't going to wreck it, wreck the opportunity I had. So I made sure I was pursuing. We're a lot of guys, they just, they want to be artists, prima donna artists, maybe, I don't know. Or they just focus on their style and taking 10 hours to do a perfect line around a figure, so they build it up. So it's this, but that's like doing a painting, you can't treat comic art that way. It's not the same as doing a fine art painting. Fine art painting, you're doing it for the express purpose of developing this, the, the, the composition, and building it up through pencil and then laying in background hues and then laying light on top of that and finding the shadow in it and building it like a sculpture, like you're adding clay and then removing it, and it takes time. But a lot of the comic artists were doing that for a little panel this big.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
can't do that. You have to focus on the storytelling because you're working with a writer, and you have to have respect for the craft of the writing. I don't have respect for the fact that the industry has sort of turned their, has given writers front and center on books, even
Yeah.
that artists have done major work on, and they don't even have their name on it alongside the writer. That's annoying. But I
Yeah. You
still,
see that a lot now.
yeah, I respect the craft of the writer, and I always wanted to give them what they put into the writing, and put it visually, give them back, and more if I could. So,
Yeah. Well, going back to TV, it was interesting. Last night, I was actually watching another podcast. It's called the Ink Pulp podcast, and it's
oh
Eric
yeah,
Canetti, Matteo Scalera,
yeah, I know
and
those guys.
I'm blanking on the other guy's name, but he's awesome too. But
Yeah,
they had Klaus Janson on there, and Klaus actually brought you up. He said he got to see you recently. I guess you guys got to go on the set of the new Daredevil show that they're filming, and he was
yeah.
talking about what a great guy you were and how much he enjoyed
Oh,
being around you. So that was really cool to hear.
oh, well, that's very nice of him. Yeah, Klaus is one of my favorite people on the planet. Actually, he's very affable, humble, intelligent, sensitive, and we've had the few times I've been able to spend with him, we've always had very deep conversations that had all of that in them. We talked about father figures at one point. We had breakfast together,
Right.
and he's a great guy, and it was just turned out happily that he was there at the same time I was. So I walk in and he's sitting there. I'm like, oh, so we got toured around together on the Daredevil set, and it was phenomenal. I mean, even aside from Klaus, it was phenomenal to witness that, dude,
Yeah.
because they're using the character I created, for the show as the main villain, Muse. And it was
Nice.
weird to see the sets come right out of my brain into 3D world. It was
So
so.
they're staying
Oh
really
yeah,
true to what you did on the book.
and they were very excited for me to see the costume. It's exact, like, and they actually added one really cool bit where they made his shirt was made out of uh, painter's canvas, like it was canvas material, like an
Oh
artist.
wow.
But it's still exact to what I had drawn, and the blood coming out of his eyes constantly, which
Oh
was
wow.
influenced a little bit by Rorschach from The Watchmen. And, I just pictured, because for me, my thought was, well, he's a serial killer artist. So what better way to represent that, but to have his eyes bleeding down to his bleeding artist heart. So it would always culminate on his chest around where
Yeah.
his heart was. So it was constant blood dripping down through here and culminating right here. So that was my metaphor for the bleeding heart of like Van Gogh or whatever, even though I was his ear, but I had to come out of his eyes. And plus, yeah. So anyway, they showed they showed me this area where he had his lair down in the tunnels underneath New York, and it was exact to what it was really strange. Like I was like, I can't even explain how weird it was to have me having drawn it. And I remember late at night trying to figure out how it was going to look and doing a camera angle from behind these sewer pipes, and and then the height of the tunnel and the shadow, and then walk in there and see that. It was like just a very strange experience. And then I got to see the dailies from the fights with Daredevil and Muse and stuff, and it was really cool.
Dude,
really cool.
That's so cool,
But
man.
yeah, back to your
It
original
really surprised
comment.
me. I'm like, oh, it just surprised me. I'm like, here I am randomly watching this podcast because I'm like, oh, cool, Klaus Jansen's on. And like in the first 5 minutes, he's talking about Ron Garney. And I'm like, that's
Well, that's
surreal.
very
I'm going
nice.
to be
Yeah,
interviewing Ron tomorrow.
it's funny because I feel like I embarrassed Klaus because I don't know, I said something to the costume designer jokingly. She said something like she was talking about getting more followers on Instagram or something, getting more notice on Instagram. I said, well, all you got to do is
Yeah.
take your shirt off and show your tits, and then you'll get more followers.
Oh, no.
Yes. And Klaus was
There
like, all
goes
right,
that.
it's time to go. Let's go, Ron. Can't take you anywhere.
The Ron, no filter Garney.
Yeah, I know. Why dude, it's so funny. Everybody says that.
Actually, you probably have more of a filter on than people realize.
Yeah, maybe. But a lot of people say that. Like, yeah, you get to know Ron, that's it. But it's not. I'm just joking. In my head, it's like a normal joke. Like it's a funny joke, but
Did you do your smile too? Your
what?
smile that people think is you like
Oh,
sneering
no,
at
no,
them?
no. Yeah, no. I've been more. Yeah, I do that less now because I'm so conscious of it. After I realize what was going on, like like my neighbor drives by
Yeah.
and I'm like that, and in my head I think I'm smiling, like, "Hey, what's going on?" Hey.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, and he looks at me, he goes like that, and then gets out of his car, like, I'm like, "What the?" I'm like, "Fuck you," And I'm like, what? Why? What is it about me that's making people look at? And then I just smiled at myself in the mirror, and then I realized it. Like,
Yeah.
it's the look on my face. It's not what's going on inside.
It's just your face. Sorry,
Yeah,
buddy. It's just your face.
You have that face.
You can't help it.
That people hate. People love.
You have a face made for audio podcasts.
Well, Klaus likes it at least.
Yeah, there you go. That's all that matters, really.
Yeah,
Well,
Klaus is, like I said, I meant everything I said about him, and I've told him that he's one of my favorite people. He's just a great guy. And we did have a ball. We got to see. We met a couple of the actors, like John Bernthal and Vince Denola.
It's another jiu-jitsu guy.
Yeah, I met him. And a couple others, a few other people. We didn't get to meet the guy who plays Daredevil there, Charlie Cox.
Charlie Cox.
Yeah, because he had just taken off to go to lunch, and so with that we were like, oh man, we'd love to have met him. But
I was so bummed one year at Emerald City Comic Con. Two of my jiu-jitsu students who are police officers, they were actually running the security for all the celebrities, and I usually don't really go over to the celebrity areas where they do all the signings and all of that. And I went and I caught up with those guys, and they go, man, I wish you would have come over yesterday. Like, we hung out with Johnny Bernthal all day. Like, he's really into jiu-jitsu, and we wanted to introduce you to him. He was like super cool. I'm like, dang it, the one time I don't go over.
He's a very cool guy. He's was very enthusiastic, when I told him, that I was the artist on Muse and who co-created it with Charles. And he was very enthusiastic and nice. Seems like just a real sort of eccentric, nice dude,
Yeah,
really,
he has
really,
a good,
really good
podcast
actor.
that he does too.
Yeah, really good actor. I really enjoyed him in like Fury with Brad Pitt. You know,
Yeah.
I've seen a few of the things
Yep.
he's done. So, um, yeah.
Well,
So
I wanted to. I know. So I know that you've got a daughter that's waiting for you to open your wallet, and
it's
I don't
funny you
want to
would
keep
say
you
that.
too long.
I was waiting for her to come in. I'm like, look, because I got to get some
Because I know
cash
you said 3:30. You told her.
out.
But what I wanted to close up with is I wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of talk about what you're currently doing. I know we touched on it a little bit that you're working on that. I think you said it was going to be like a 42-page Berserker
Yeah, I think it's
book.
44 or 48 pages.
Okay.
I'm about halfway through it, and not quite. But that's what I'm working on. And then after that, Matt and I, we had a meeting on Easter Sunday about a Skype meeting about doing the next Berserker #2, the sequel, and what we were going to do with that, because we
Nice.
really don't have much of a story yet. And I came up with some crazy ideas that we might get to use. So we'll see, but that's basically what's slated. I'm so invested in Berserker at this point. I don't see myself doing anything else. I've had offers
Yeah.
from various people, and I wasn't sure if we were going to even do Berserker again. But again, I'm invested in it, and so that's what I'll be doing. Maybe to the end of my career. I don't know if I might retire after this. I,
Yeah.
I had retirement in my head, and just do special things here and there that aren't time consuming. But even this Berserker special, it's Genghis Khan and his armies, and so I'm like,
Yeah.
ah. So I'm sitting
Lots
here
of
drawing.
horses. You're
Yeah,
drawing a
lots of
lot of horses.
horses, and yeah,
Yeah.
you probably have seen some of the drawings I've done
Yeah.
that I posted on Instagram, and that's and you see some of the soldiers and stuff, but there's armies and battles, and so and lots
Well,
of
in
detail, in the Genghis Khan,
yeah.
in the 13th century, you have to make it look authentic. So I'm constantly referencing what the costumes and the designs, and to make it look authentic and make sure that they're from the 13th century, and trying not to waffle on that. If out of everything else, I want it to feel like an epic movie, not a TV
Yeah.
show, but an actual film that you get to read in a comic book. So I'm trying to be very authentic with it, and so that's what's occupying all my time.
And you've said the name. You've said the name Keanu a few times, and just for people who aren't maybe in the know, he's talking about Keanu Reeves. So Ron's getting to work on, this project with Keanu. It's a character that Keanu came up with, a character idea, and that's consumed the past. How many years now have you been working on it?
Yeah,
Leaving in a few
all
minutes.
right. Give me 2 seconds, James.
We were talking about you getting to work with Keanu on
Yeah,
Berserker, and
yeah.
man, what's that been like? I mean, it has to be pretty cool, like to, get to work with somebody. Obviously, like we all know who he is. He's a huge celebrity, like. But I've always heard these stories about him just being this, humble, down to earth dude. You see him on the videos giving people his seat on the subway and all of that, and he's a creative guy. Obviously, like he came up. Like, do you know? Is he a comic fan? Like, has he been a comic fan since he was younger? I would assume if he's coming up with a comic book idea that
Well,
he,
he claims to be. I mean, he says he's been. I don't know
yeah,
how extensive that is. It might have been just maybe even more than I ever was. Like I mentioned, I didn't even like. It was odd to me when I got into the business how much of the lore some of these writers knew of comics. Like it was like I have no idea
yeah.
who 90% of the characters are. Because
You're
I
like you friggin' nerd. That's what you
well,
were like.
I
You
just didn't
guys are a
read
bunch of
them.
nerds.
Yeah. So, but Keanu's talked on interviews about and brought up certain comic books and comic strips that he liked. So, I mean, I just have to take him at his word. He says he read them,
Yeah,
like Frank Miller and Wolverine, and some other things. So,
that iconic stuff.
yeah, I guess he brought up a couple of like one comic I had never heard of. I think he might have mentioned Love and Rockets too. I don't remember,
Oh,
but
okay.
it was in an
Yeah,
interview, and I don't remember the exact. I do not remember him saying Frank Miller and and some Wolverine stuff. Yeah, but it's already been over 4 years now. We've been working.
Wow.
It's a long time to work on a character and with a person, and Matt, and it's going to be another few years. It's going to be better part of a decade by the time it's all done, probably.
Yeah, and I heard
The
it's
movie and all
yeah,
that.
I was gonna bring that up. It's like there's supposed to be a movie, there's supposed to be like a live action series or something,
Yeah,
and maybe a cartoon, or I've heard
it's
all
going to be
sorts of rumors.
it's supposed to be a live action movie and then an anime
Okay.
series. With so done in the anime animated
Yeah.
style. So but that
Yeah.
I haven't heard much about that lately, so I don't know um, uh,
So
what
that could
the
potentially lead
latest
to
is.
even more work for you
Well, I
if
don't know
it's
about work. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to be working on it. I don't
well,
know
potentially
what capacity.
getting your input,
Yeah, I'm
I would
sure
assume.
it would be nice to see them maybe match my style a little bit.
Yeah, stay kind of true to how you've portrayed the character would be cool.
Yeah, I don't know that. Well, I do know that Keanu doesn't want the main story in the live action film to be just like the comic because that's already been done. But I
Right.
don't know if I agree with that to a point. I do think that you should have some of it be some of the source material, from the story a bit, because there's a origin there and everything else that should be told in the movie.
Yeah.
But it's his baby, and I've told him that it's his baby. I'm not, I'm there to facilitate what his vision is, and I add my input. I'll have more input actually on the second time around towards the story. The first story was kind of already in the works by the time I was asked to do it. There was actually a whole other artist before me. Well, first
Oh,
they were,
okay.
I guess, first Raphael Grandpa was. They asked him, and then they hired this guy Alessandro Vitti, and then it didn't work out for whatever reasons. I mean, that's their business.
Gotcha.
So, but he drew the whole first issue.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, and they actually had some of it on Bleeding Cool, and they compared mine with his, and it was this whole thing,
Yeah.
um, which they like to cause trouble. It looks like.
They love to do that because it gets more engagement and clicks. And
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It seemed like they were pitting us against each other, kind of.
I was going to say trying to create a rivalry that didn't
Yeah,
actually exist.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, and I didn't know anything about the project, and it had been going on for like over a year before I got involved. So I didn't have any input on the story or anything, but I did. Once the ball got rolling, I was having fairly regular conversations with Keanu and Matt. Eventually, more and more throughout the process, and Keanu was very involved in it. And he asked me right from the get go, would I be okay with him giving me notes? And at first I was like, no. He's like, his exact words were, well, can I maybe offer some notes, or should I just fuck off? I'm like, yeah, just fuck off, I said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, no, of course, I'm kidding. I've been doing this long
Yeah.
enough that I don't, it's okay to tell me what you think, obviously. But I did say within reason, I don't want to get stuck because a lot of these guys don't understand is the amount of time it takes to put this together. So I don't want to get stuck if he, redrawing entire pages and,
Yeah, and a lot of people don't, and not necessarily him, but because he understands film and stuff probably, but a lot of
yeah,
people don't realize like there are things you can describe with written word that are very hard to interpret and put into
sequential,
a sequential. I'm gonna leave.
Sasquatchal,
I'm gonna leave that in there. Yeah, and
Sasquatchal.
exactly in a story, in a visual art form, in panels and everything. Like you find sometimes, or I've seen certain things where writers describe this crazy scene without having any concept of how that has to be interpreted to make sense on the page, like
Absolutely.
to guide a reader through it and everything. So
Sometimes I think writers throw as much in as they can so they get even more than they know they'll get back on purpose.
yeah,
Just so they can get back, enough to
right,
fill their story. I noticed that with this a bit that, like this, even this last one, like the good part about this one I'm working on is I'm just drawing it and turning it in. I don't have to deal with the revisions or anything like that. Um, but I did notice that Matt has a tendency to put as much in it in each panel as he can. And I think it's so he'll get back something that resembles in fullness, what he's got in his head as far as how full the story should be. And so I
yeah,
have to, unfortunately, I mean, I can't put everything, but I try to add things where I can't put in what he's asking, because some things just aren't reasonable. I
yeah,
cannot put in 10,000 soldiers on a panel. I
yeah,
just can't. It's just not possible. It would require an electron microscope basically
yep.
to draw it. So I try to suggest as much as I can, find ways to do that. That's the difference between the visual and the written medium. One is written is literal. That's why it's called literature, and the
Yep.
other is suggestive, and that's why it's art. So there's a difference. So I have to suggest things that are literal in the writing. You know, visually. So there, yeah. So that's pretty much how I approach it.
Well, I
You
think
know,
you're doing. I think you do an amazing job with it. Like I know, as an artist, you're probably your own worst critic, but
yeah.
you do a really good job with it, and I think it does really come across. You know what you're trying to do there,
I
and
wish I could see it through eyes that aren't mine sometimes, because
yeah,
the comments I get, which are most of the really nice comments I get, are something where I go, "Wow, really? You see that in it?" Because I'm so close to it, and then sometimes I can get to that place if I haven't looked at my own work in years.
hmm
I'll go back to something I did, even Daredevil, for instance, which is now going on 8 years ago, 9 years ago.
I can't believe that it's been
Yeah,
that long. It
it's been
seems like
nine
you were
years.
just on that. Yeah,
9 years ago, I did that book,
you did
and
the after that. You did that brief. It was the Juggernaut miniseries, right? Was that
I
fairly
did.
close to after Daredevil?
I did Savage Sword of Conan.
Mm,
I did
that's right.
a Thing story that I co-wrote, which was really cool to get to co-write it. And then I did the Juggernaut thing. Yeah, I did a few different things in between, but this Savage Sword was probably the most prominent. And actually, it's what got Keanu interested in me to do Berserker,
Yeah.
because I guess they showed him my work and he really liked it. So because when they first approached me about him, they said, "Oh, we're doing this book with Keanu Reeves, and he really loves your work." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What are you talking about? Like Keanu Reeves, the actor?" And I'm like, "Okay." Well, I'm like, "Well, I
Well,
didn't hear that from him."
yeah.
But it turns out, the way it was laid out to me was like he was a big fan, like he was a comic fan. He loved my work, but it turns out he loved my work from what he saw on Savage Sword
Right.
when they were looking for another artist.
Well, it's
So
interesting because you've had such a long career, and in your style, you really made a big switch with the Daredevil book. I think,
yeah, well, I
like
think Men of Wrath influenced that.
Minarath for sure.
Yeah,
That was a
that's
style
where
change, but
I was really.
you went like full into it into that Daredevil stuff, and ever since.
Yeah,
What was the impetus of that? Like what kind of inspired that creative shift? Was it to keep things exciting for you, or just try something out that you hadn't really done? Like I see some little bit of Frank Miller in it with some of the light and shadows and things. Like were you pulling from stuff that inspired you, and you're like, Man, I just want to mix it up a little bit. I'm sitting here drawing all day.
Yeah, honestly, there was no direct lifting of anything. I didn't even look at anybody else, but
Just kind of happened, huh?
it just happened. It's like you could say, yeah, you saw a little bit of Frank Miller. That's true. I guess, I would say there's probably some Mazzucchelli-ish stuff in there. Um, Maybe. There's definitely some JR in there, maybe.
Yeah, I can see the JR. Yeah.
But that's been my thrust. I guess we're always influenced by what's around us, But I couldn't tell you, when I got into that, I made the commitment on Men of Wrath to just ink my own work from now on.
Yeah.
I was never getting back with other inkers what I had in my head. It doesn't matter how good they were. It could have been anybody from Klaus to Sal Buscema to other inkers who were, less prolific.
Hmm.
But I would never, I worked with Bill Reinhold on Spider-Man, and they're all great. There's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with them as inkers or, or artists themselves. It's just, but when you're doing that, you're never getting what's really you completely. It would be
So
like
when you,
Charles Schultz drawing Peanuts with a different inker wouldn't be Charles Schultz.
yeah. So when you
So
did Men of Wrath, you inked yourself and were heavily involved with the story and everything. Like that was, you think some of the tone of the story kind of influenced your style as well? Like that
for
was a pretty
sure,
dark.
it
That
was
was a pretty
dark.
dark story, right?
Yeah, it was dark and violent, and it just so happened I was really hooking into. Now I had always played around with very stark black and white stuff. If you look back on early Ghost Rider issues, I did. There were panels here and there where I was doing very stark black and whites, and I was very influenced by Alex Toth in my entire career, and guys like that. And then Miller was in there, but he's influenced by Toth as well, and
Right.
Will Eisner, and we all came from those places. It's not like it was.
Yeah.
I had been accused. I remember reading something once, and the guy was like, "Ron Garney's a thief because I did something in a Miller, like it looked Millerish." And it was like, I'm not a thief. We're influenced by a lot of the same people. And yeah, I mean, I love trying different things. Right now, what I'm doing on this lost book of Berserker, I'm really having a ball doing Sergio Topi type stuff. And I don't know if you know who Sergio Topi is.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
He's freaking ridiculous.
Yeah. Incredible.
He's one of the most top illustrators I've ever seen in my life. That's how good he is. And in pen and ink work and comic and even his coloring is just phenomenal to me. I've been influenced by him for decades. Well, just not, I can't even say influenced, but just blown away by his work. I've been a
Mm.
huge admirer of it. But this time, I just really, because it's Genghis Khan, I thought, man, what a cool look it would be to try that kind of stuff he does. And if you look back at stuff I did in my high school, like I have a picture of Leonardo da Vinci I did in a style of pen and ink that's very similar to what Topi does, and I didn't know who Topi was back then. So we go with what is in our instincts, and what we're drawn to. And so if I see somebody that presses those buttons in me, I am drawn to that. The same way we are with any relationship in life, we tend to get drawn towards people who can push our buttons a certain way.
Yeah.
Sometimes negatively. You don't want to be in a relationship with somebody who pushes your buttons negatively, but in a positive way. I tend to be drawn towards visual work that pushes the right buttons in me. It could be Mobius, it could be, and there's so many that for me, I don't have an ego about it. I just look at it and go, oh, I want to try that. That's really cool. What was their thought
Yeah.
process going in? How did he think of his rendering? How is he approaching his rendering there? And the only way you can really understand it is to do it yourself. We learn by doing, as people have said. But the only way you can really understand somebody's work, is to try it yourself. you don't want to try to be that person, but you try to use the technique and the thought process behind the technique. And that's what I'm doing right now. I did it on Silver Surfer with Mobius. A few issues I was really experimenting with it and, trying to get the thought behind it, and that's how you kind of are really influenced by somebody, not just by saying you're influenced, by actually getting in there for real and getting rid of your ego and being, uh, uh, submit yourself to it, to their process, to their vision, and to really try to focus on it and understand what they're doing. And then your own work evolves. That's how you stay evolving. Um, a lot of guys, they get so wrapped up in doing their own thing where they don't deviate from it that they never grow, and they actually devolve a little bit. I'm not going to name names, but I've seen artists whose work used to blow me away, but they get stuck in that same repetitive thing that they do for so long that they actually become a sort of Xerox copy of themselves from years earlier. They don't realize it, to them they're still doing it, but styles evolve and change over time. Everything evolves and grows, and if you don't do that with your work like nature does, you will eventually be cast aside, um, naturally by the evolutionary process, because you are no longer, uh, you know, a fitting piece to the evolved, the new evolved thing. So I try to, get rid of my ego. Nature doesn't really have an ego about it, So I don't think in terms of, well, oh, I want my style to be better than everyone else's. I just have fun. I go in there and I try to have a ball with, figuring something out. Like right now, I'm on a Topi binge because I just want to figure it out. And maybe that's where my ego is. I don't know. I mean, if I were to analyze it, I'd say, okay, well, in my head, I'm going to figure that out, because,
Right, right.
I'm going to get to know what that is, you know. And so that's how I approach my work. And it keeps me from getting bored too easily with my own stuff. It stops me from being bored because I have to figure something out. If I'm going to sit here, I want to figure something out, not just the storytelling, but the actual process of how it builds up the three dimensionality from there. And that's fun to me, and maybe because of that, it translates to other people because they go, well, I thought Garney was this. Well, I thought he was that. No, wait,
Yeah,
what's Richie doing?
everybody wants to put you in a certain box, right?
Yeah, they do. They really
Yeah.
do. And the one box I definitely noticed that I get put in is action artist. I started writing a movie script and I presented it to some people, and they weren't into it because it was more of it's action in it, but it's more of a love story centered around jujitsu
Oh, okay.
in New York City and a plumber.
There you
It's
go.
this whole story I came up with. I don't want to say it; somebody will steal it.
Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, so and I have Henzo in it, and I was going to ask if I could ever make it into a movie, I would ask you to be in it, and all these friends and people I know from the jiu-jitsu.
Yes. I'm
Yeah,
verbally committing right now.
yeah, and it would be great, and I know that there's never been a great movie like that. It's a
Yeah.
fictional thing centered around that, and it has a bit of Old Boy in it, and a bit of Karate Kid in it, and some of the story, and Romeo and Juliet. And there's all these. It's a mix of all these things, but they were just not into it. So because they said, we're looking for Ron Garney's action, and the kinetic energy, and I'm like, yeah, but that why would you just want that, that's
Yeah.
pigeonholing me, and that's not, I'm not going to be pigeonholed, so I'm going
Because
to start.
everybody's looking for that instant dopamine hit.
Yeah, and that's, the minute you give into
Speaks.
that and become
Yeah.
what everybody else expects you to be, that's when you start to die. you know that's when
I
you
think yeah.
you know and
That's definitely, you're a wise man.
oh, thank you. Well, it's just I definitely think we could use a little more philosophy in our thought processes in life. It would help culture and help instead of all
Right.
the superficial nature of everything now. There are no good philosophers left in the well, you do have some, but nobody pays attention anymore. People are so wrapped up in the immediate gratification
Yeah.
of
Right
self.
back to right back to what we were talking about, kind of that social media
Yeah.
instant gratification mentality.
And there's no self
Speaking,
awareness.
yeah, no self-awareness.
I'm not that.
Eh,
If anything, I'm more
Yeah.
self-aware. I'm too self-aware in a way, and that's why I'm focused on other things. But go ahead.
I was going to say, speaking of social media, we need to make sure to let everybody know where they can see your work. I think Instagram's kind of the main place that you probably
Yeah,
post the most often.
I go. I go in spurts with it. I'm not. Some guys post every single day, and they post every pencil line they do. And I just can't do it. Again, I use it as the tool that I find is necessary to use it for. And sometimes, like, I posted my motorcycle this morning because I just love my motorcycle, but
Yeah.
but but again, it's the ego thing. I really make efforts to keep that stuff contained because I find it distasteful. To be so into yourself that you cannot help but constantly be so needy, but to keep getting that validation from
Yep.
clicks and likes, and and it becomes a false world uh, of self actualization. It's not real self actualization. They
Yeah.
think it
It's
is.
definitely it's kind of, I mean, it's a huge
Yeah, because
narcissism thing.
self actualization comes from self awareness. And that if you can't be self aware about why you're posting so much on social media, how could you actually? You're not really being self aware. You're just needing the ego boost and the actualization it brings. But it's not. It's not self awareness. Self awareness is knowing when you're doing too much. Is knowing why you're doing something. It's knowing what you need to grow. It's knowing all these things. And I sense from the nature of things like Instagram and social media wipes away self awareness because it makes you think the world revolves around your opinions or and that's not self awareness either. Your self awareness is how you link, is how it comes from years of experience outside of all of that. You have to be alone. You have to be, explore the world. You have to use geography. You have to use hardship and learn from hardship, which creates self awareness. You have to fail, fall, pick yourself up again. You have to have empathy for others and how they fail and fall, and study why they do, and how you can learn from that. All these things, but you can't learn from spending most of your time not getting life experience on social media, because social media is not life experience. All it is this televised sort of box where you're and you're immersing yourself in other people's opinions, but you're not getting life experience from it. You're
Yeah,
watching other
you're
people's.
posting a very curated version of yourself as well, because
Yeah,
nobody is
yeah,
posting, very rarely do you see people posting stuff that's unfiltered, or
well,
the bad
yeah,
the
i
bad
actually i
aspects.
actually spoofed something about that recently. I don't know if you saw it, but I posted this video of me going,
Yes.
did you see that?
Yeah, and
And
then
I wrote,
everybody was worried about you because they don't understand your humor.
yeah, but it was because I've been seeing lately, like, these a lot of women mostly, and they're usually gorgeous women, and they're saying, "My boyfriend left me and I was the perfect girl. What's wrong with me?"
Yeah, yeah.
Looking in the camera, like, because all they're
Yeah,
doing it's phony. It's like they're
yeah.
phonily, talking about something that should be a life experience, that should be a growing experience, that's an emotion, should be an emotional experience, but you're doing it for clicks. So that's how
Yep.
bad it's gotten, where they're
Yeah.
actually using that as a technique to get the same narcissistic rush
Yep.
from seeing clicks and likes, but you're not
And to get,
really
yeah,
experiencing
get
it.
that validation, right? Like
It's so fake.
the ones that kill me, and people used to do this on Facebook, like before Instagram was really popular, and they would post it, we would call it vague booking. It'd be like a picture of them in a hospital bed and no caption or anything.
Yeah.
And then everybody would, oh, are you okay? What's wrong? It's like, or the, person posts, oh, I'm so ugly or whatever. And
Yeah,
it's
they're
like a
not.
curated, filtered photo. And then everybody's telling them how beautiful they are.
Yeah, and how often are you driving down the road, like going like this in your car,
Yeah,
and there's a camera filming you, and they
yeah.
post. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like, my God, we're losing these last couple of generations in a terrible way. That this is what they
Yeah.
think is life is about. And I don't know if there's anything you can do about it, because this is just what is available. What I teach my kids is the opposite. I keep them away from that stuff on purpose. I mean, they do engage in it somewhat. I don't let them on Facebook or
Yeah.
Instagram. My son watches those split-second TikTok things or whatever they are, because they're
Yeah, yeah.
funny. And I sit and I actually laugh at them too, because it's like watching the Three Stooges, just people
Yeah.
falling over stuff, or, and it's quick cut after quick cut. So it's funny. So I let them do that, but everything else I don't, because I don't want them to grow into shallow vessels that are open, that are whores for the social media, uh, whore masters that are trying to turn you into empty vessels that they can, turn you into consumers of that
Yep.
and nothing else, with no individuality, no life experience, nothing to carve away character in you. You need character. And the only way, again, self-awareness and character is built from experience, geography, hardship, all these things that mold you. These things you can learn in jujitsu, really. Jujitsu kind of teaches that a
Yeah.
bit, because you go in there and you get your ass kicked, and you're not as tough as you thought you were, and you have to self-reflect on why. And it can have a bad effect. Some guys become egocentric about it, and they want to smash everybody because their egos are, even black belts. I gotta say, dude, it's like, and I don't know if you've experienced this,
Yeah.
because you're so big and you seem pretty indomitable. But at my age, I've noticed a huge difference in my ability to keep up. My knees are less stable, and I'm not as fast. So the younger
Oh,
black belts,
I've definitely noticed things.
yeah,
There's
and
changes for sure.
yeah, but I went into my friend Brad's school, and a couple black belts in there, and I'm like, look, I hadn't. It was a 100-degree day. I wanted to just go easy, and they, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It's always, oh yeah, for sure. And as soon as they slap hands, 30 seconds in, psst, the minute you start getting what they think is an upper
That's
hand,
what I was gonna say. Yeah.
it's like they're like,
It's always let's go easy until you start doing well. And then it's on.
exactly. Yeah, and I'm not even trying to do well. I'm just doing the move and whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like they're so panicked about losing, to this,
Yep.
the higher ranked black belt. And you've got
Yeah.
a target on your head. Doesn't matter. I don't care who it is.
Yes, sir.
And if anybody says it doesn't exist in the black belts, bullshit. It does. I've
Oh,
seen
it
it.
100% exists.
Yeah.
100%.
Crazy.
Yes, sir.
You
Well,
know,
listen, my friend, I've taken up a lot of your time today.
yeah, I know. I'm supposed to be working on Genghis Khan.
I feel like we could probably do like a 3-hour one of these. So what this tells me is we don't get to hang out and chat often enough. So we're definitely going to have to do this again.
I've said this to you before. If I wish we lived together and you had a school, I would be at your school, and I would love to have trained under you.
Yeah,
And just, I think we would be hanging out all the time, fast friends, and so when I do get to
definitely.
see you, it's an honor for me, my friend, and a privilege, and
Likewise.
I honor our friendship.
Same here. Ditto. Well, listen, so your Instagram it's at Ron Garney Art. Is that correct?
Ron Garney Art, Instagram.
Yep.
And Facebook, I'm on Facebook, but that's more, yeah.
Yeah, so I'll make sure I post all those in the show notes and everything, and make sure that everybody can find you. I'd like to do something. I saw earlier you had a guitar, and normally I play my outro, and we dance around a little bit. But one thing we didn't get to touch on is the fact that you're in a band and you're actually a musician too, on top of all your other numerous talents. Would you play us out? Could you do a little something for the outro?
Oh my god! Well,
don't get shy, because when you popped on the camera, you were playing that thing.
Yeah, well, that's when we weren't recording.
And
this is
hey, don't curate yourself, buddy. We were just talking about this. Post the unfiltered version right now. Oh, it's kind of not picking it up. That's weird. It's not picking it up. Yeah, the mic's not picking it up.
It's canceling it out.
Oh my goodness.
Does it pick that up?
Yeah, it's like it's picking up like a little bit. It's like it's noise canceling it or something.
Oh, that's why. Well, I'm off the hook then.
Dang it. Well, I'm gonna play my outro, and you won't be able to hear it, but I still want to see your dance moves. I mean, we do.
If I had my piano here, I'd play you a piano concert. But
there you go.
Yeah, you've seen my piano.
Well, I have seen your piano.
My piano. No.
So,
by the way, your father.
Hit this outro? Did my dad reach out to you?
No, but I just always wanted to comment how I think I've mentioned it before. It's nice to see how proud he is of you.
Yes, definitely a proud dad. Definitely
a good relationship I see there.
Definitely makes me very happy. Yes.
Good to see.
Hang tight with me here for a moment. I'm going to hit this. Everybody, keep it nerdy. Make sure you go follow Ron. Definitely one of the most interesting guys in the comic industry. Everybody take care.
Says who?
Hey. And if you could hear this, you would be grooving.
What?
Yeah, you can't hear my outro, but I can hear it.
Yeah, I don't hear it either.
Yeah. Pretend you do. Let's see, what are some of the dance moves?
I hear it a little bit.
Fist bump. You got fist bump. Yeah, but careful about. Careful where you put your.
That's what Trump always does. He's always like.
Raise the roof. You got raise the roof. Yeah. Head bob. Night at the Roxbury.